So last week, a student said to me, Mr. Fairber, what rhymes with orange? And I said, no, it doesn't. See, it takes a second. It takes a second. I don't know what to say about the jokes. I don't. They get better with time, right? Yeah, right. Okay. So here we are, lesson 12. Man, you've been doing great. So here we are, analyzing incidents that propel action, build tension, and reveal insight into characters. So our last, couple lessons, we haven't looked too deeply at any incidences or events that have happened. We've really just talked about the characters and kind of little things here and there. But today we're going to look a bigger picture. We're going to look at some of the things that have happened. Okay, so what we did last time in our last lesson is that we began reading and discussing Chapter 3 of Call of the Wild, and we analyzed how incidents propel action and build suspense in the text. We have more of that today. Again, just a bigger overview of what we'll be doing. And there it is. We're going to continue reading Chapter 3, Call of the Wild. We're going to analyze how incidents in chapter propel the action, build tension, and reveal insight into Buck's character. What you're going to need today: Call of the Wild by Jack London, split page notes. Let me put the overlay here. Split page notes for chapter 3. We're going to be working on page 34, 33, and 34 today. And then in the blue notebook, also page 37, your incident chart. It says your vocabulary chart. Question mark right now. I'm not sure if we're going to do this or not. So we'll see as I go through the lesson. We'll see if we get to the vocabulary chart or not. Okay, so to get a good idea of how these incidents or these events are adding up to something bigger than just reading a little story piece by piece, is like they're building on one another. Let's reread something from yesterday, okay? So look at this paragraph here and just read along on the screen with me if you can. If you can't, you can try to find it in your book. Just pause it, try to find it in your book. I'm not sure. There it is. It's at the very top of page 32. Okay, so if you want to read this out of your book, it's page 32. 32 at the very top. Here I go. Buck staggered over against the sled, exhausted, sobbing for breath, helpless. This was Spit's opportunity. He sprang upon Buck, and twice his teeth sank into his unresisting foe and ripped and tore the flesh to the bone. Then Francois's lash descended, and Buck had the satisfaction of watching Spitz receive the worst whipping as yet administered to any of the team. "One devil dat Spitz," remarked Perrault. "Some damn day him kill dat Buck." "Dat Buck two devils," was Francois's rejoinder. "All de time I watch dat Buck I know for sure. Listen, some damn fine day he get mad like hell, and den him chew dat Spitz all up and spit him out on de snow. Sure, I know." From then on, it was war between them. Whew, man. So, this is like the second time that we've seen Spitz actually attack Buck, kind of out of the blue, unexpectedly. Why does Jack London repeat this incident of Spitz attacking Buck? What is he trying to communicate to us about that relationship? Push pause if you need to think about it for a second. I'm going to pause as well. Okay, really, what Jack London is doing here is he's trying to build some suspense by, one thing, then another thing repeated, and now we're waiting for what? The next big thing, right? That's what he's doing. He's setting up repetition here. It's a pattern. It's a pattern where we see Buck is in the middle of a really bad situation and Spitz attacks. Okay, Buck is being surrounded by these crazy rabies-infested what are they? Not wolves, the huskies. He's surrounded by these huskies, and Spitz jumps at him. okay? Or here, Buck is being chased by that poor little doggy. I felt really bad for her, you know? It's like, it wasn't her fault she got the hydrophobia. Um, but he was being chased by that dog. I can't remember her name now, but you get what I'm saying. She had rabies. She's chasing him. Dolly, is that right? Anyway, but we feel bad for him, and then he falls down in front of Francois, exhausted from running after such a long day, and Spitz is right there to jump on him. So we're expecting the same thing's going to happen again pretty soon, okay? And that's what he's doing here. He's setting up some repetition for us, and authors will do this. We always look for patterns when we read. Always look for patterns, words or ideas that are connected, words or ideas that repeat themselves. That's what you're looking for. They're little clues about what the author's trying to do. We're going to jump into the book now, and continuing right where I left off. From then on it was war. And we're going to read to the end, or to end at page 36, where the paragraph that ends, fight amongst his mates and tangle the traces. So as we read this, I'd like you to keep in mind that we're expecting more confrontation between Spitz and Buck. All right, again, page 32, looking about a third of the way down the page. From then on it was war. Follow along. From then on, it was war between them. Spitz, as lead dog and acknowledged master of the team, felt his supremacy threatened by this strange Southland dog. And strange Buck was to him, for one of the many Southland dogs he had known. Not one had shown up worthily in camp and on the trail. They were all too soft, dying under the toil, the frost, and starvation. Buck was the exception. He alone endured and prospered, matching the husky in strength, savagery, and cunning. There's that word savage again, right? Savagery. Then he was a masterful dog. And what made him dangerous was the fact that the club of the man in the red sweater had knocked all blind pluck and rashness out of his desire for mastery. He was preeminently cunning, and could bide his time with a patience that was nothing less than primitive. There's that word primitive. So his patience is just crazy. He just has this crazy amount of patience. It was inevitable that the clash for leadership should come. Buck wanted it. He wanted it because it was his nature, because he had been gripped tight by the nameless, incomprehensible or ununderstandable, incomprehensible pride of the trail and trace. That pride which holds dogs in the toil of the last gasp, which lures them to die joyfully in the harness, and breaks their hearts if they are cut out of the harness. This was the pride of Dave as wheel dog, of Sol-leks as he pulled with all his strength. The pride that laid hold of them at break of camp, transforming them from sour and sullen brutes into straining, eager, ambitious creatures. The pride that spurred them on all day and dropped them at pitch of camp at night, letting them fall into gloomy unrest and uncontent. This was the pride that bore up Spitz and made him thrash the sled dogs who blundered and shirked in the traces or hid away at harness up time in the morning. Likewise, it was this pride that made him fear Buck as a possible lead dog, and this was Buck's pride too. So in this paragraph, we're seeing motivation, what drives these dogs to do what they do. And you may have been looking at this and thinking, well, they're pulling on these sleds because they're being whipped, or they're pulling on these sleds because they got beat by the man in the red sweater, and that's what drives them on. And that's not what this text is indicating. It's indicating that it's actually something primitive. It's something they were made for. It's something in the instinct of the dog. There's a deep lasting pride, a pride of like hard work and accomplishing something almost. Um, and it's all these dogs' competing pride that drives them to do what they do. And at the end here, it says, it talks about Spitz and how Spitz has a lot of pride. It's the pride that drives him to like abuse the other dogs. He's really cocky. He's really like, I'm the best. I'm the best. I'm gonna knock you down. You know, I'm on top because you're garbage. Like that's what drives Spitz, that feeling. And but it makes him afraid of Buck. Okay, he realizes, uh-oh, like he's scared that Buck's gonna rise up, and it says that this was Buck's pride too. That Buck was actually, he got his motivation from knowing that pretty soon, sooner or later, that Spitz was gonna go down. And he's like, I don't need to make it happen yet. I got this when the time is right. So let's continue reading. By the way, if you see my video flicking in and out, it's because I'm pausing to cough. So I have I have coffee throat right now. And I just don't want you to listen to my coughing. It's kind of gross. So I'll be pausing a lot. Paragraph there, page 33, next paragraph down. He openly threatened the other's leadership. He came between him and the shirks he should have punished. This is Buck. Buck is coming um, in between this dog that we're talking about, who has a name that I can't remember. Just read his name, Spitz. What's wrong with me, guys? It's too late. I should go to bed. So Buck is actually coming in between Spitz and the dogs that Spitz is trying to abuse. He's walking up between them and just breaking them up. So Buck openly threatened the other's leadership. He came between him and the shirks he should have punished, and he did it deliberately. One night there was a heavy snowfall, and in the morning Pike, the malingerer, did not appear. He was securely hidden in his nest under a foot of snow. Francois called him and sought him in vain. Spitz was wild with wrath. He raged through the camp, smelling and digging in every likely place, snarling so frightfully that Pike heard and shivered in his hiding place. I feel bad for Pike. Malinger means somebody who fakes being sick to like make people feel bad for him. I feel bad for him. Even if he's not faking, it's like, oh, Spitz is trying to just kill this dog and he just wants to rest. You know, like you just don't want to get out of bed. It's Pike, poor guy. Next paragraph. But when he was at last unearthed and Spitz flew at him to punish him, Buck flew with equal rage in between. So unexpected was it, and so shrewdly managed, that Spitz was hurled backward off his feet. Pike, who had been trembling abjectly, took heart at this open mutiny and sprang upon his overthrown leader. Buck, to whom fair play was a forgotten code, likewise sprang upon Spitz. But Francois, chuckling at the incident, there's that word incident because we have an incident chart, okay? But Francois, chuckling at the incident while unswerving in the administration of justice, brought his lash down upon Buck with all his might. This failed to drive Buck from his prostrate rival, and the butt of the whip was brought into play. Half stunned by the blow, Buck was knocked backward, and the lash laid upon him again and again, while Spitz soundly punished the many times offending Pike. Okay, so we get this picture of Francois is now jumping in the middle, and Francois, right? He's a fair man. That's something that Buck learned about Francois and Perrault right away, is that they were fair. Because you remember, Spitz tried to steal Buck's food way back, and when Spitz tried to steal the food, they got after Spitz. They whipped Spitz, and Buck was like, "Oh, they're fair." So Francois is a fair guy. He's gonna punish Buck for attacking Spitz. He just is. But he's laughing while he does it. He's like, "Oh man," he's like, "Here it goes." He goes, this dog," and he's just giggling. He thinks it's kind of funny, even though he's whipping Buck. He's like, "Man, I hate to do this to you. I know you're better than Spitz, but just you gotta cool it, buddy." And then while that's happening, Spitz is attacking Pike back. So there you go. So page 34. In the days that followed, as Dawson grew closer and closer, Buck still continued to interfere between Spitz and the culprits, or the people who were guilty of things, the dogs that were, messing up. But he did it craftily, when Francois was not around. With the covert mutiny of Buck, a general insubordination sprang up and increased. Mutiny means rebelling against the leader of a ship, like the captain of a ship. Mutiny is where the sailors kill the captain and take over the ship. So he said the covert, and covert means hidden. So the hidden overthrowing by Buck. So Buck is creating a mutiny. He's creating a rebellion against Spitz. There was a general insubordination that sprang up and increased. Pause. Insubordination means just straight up refusing to do what you're told to do by a leader. So a leader says something like, "Stop talking," or a leader says, "Sit down in your chair," or a leader says, "Look at me when I'm talking," and you just straight up don't do it. You're like, "Psh, I'm gonna do what I want today. I'm gonna use my phone anyway, Mr. Fairburn. I don't care what you say. I'm texting my mom, and you can't take my phone from me." Ha! Okay, that's insubordination. So Buck is creating this atmosphere of rebellion and insubordination. The other dogs are joining in on it. So we'll read that one sentence again and you can catch up with where we're at. With the covert mutiny of Buck, a general insubordination sprang up and increased. Dave and Solex were unaffected, but the rest of the team went from bad to worse. Things no longer went right. There was continual bickering and jangling. Trouble was always afoot, and at the bottom of it was Buck. He kept Francois busy, for the dog driver was in constant apprehension of the life and death struggle between the two, which he knew must take place sooner or later. And on more than one night the sounds of quarreling and strife among the other dogs turned him out of his sleeping robe, fearful that Buck and Spitz were at it. But the opportunity did not present itself, and they pulled into Dawson one dreary afternoon, with the great fight still to come. Alright, so he's hinting that there's another confrontation that's going to happen between these two. And finally they're in Dawson. Man, if you're feeling what I'm feeling, I'm glad they finally made Dawson, because I was rough getting there. So we feel relieved because they're in a town finally. But man, this confrontation is going to be, it's going to be good. Here were many men and countless dogs, and Buck found them all at work. It seemed the ordained order of things that dogs should work. All day they swung up and down the main street in long teams, and in the night their jingling bells still went by. They hauled cabin logs and firewood, freighted up to the mines, and did all manner of work that horses did in the Santa Clara Valley. Here and there, Butt, okay, not Beck, not the Butt. We shall not call him Butt. Buck met Southland dogs, but in the main they were the wild wolf husky breed. Every night, regularly at 9, at 12, at 3, they lifted a nocturnal song, a weird and eerie chant, in which it was Buck's delight to join. With the aurora borealis flaming coldly overhead, those are the northern lights that you see pictures of in the north. Man, if you've never seen aurora borealis or northern lights, You need to watch a YouTube video of that. Like, it's really crazy that that happens naturally in the sky. It's like glowing green ribbons. And you can ask Miss LaRue about how that happens. It's really fascinating how the aurora borealis happens with the sun at nighttime and the atmosphere. It's crazy. So ask her if you want to learn about that. Sorry for the sidetrack. With the aurora borealis flaming coldly overhead, or the stars leaping in the frost dance, and the land numb and frozen under its pall of snow, this song of the huskies might have been the defiance of life, only it was pitched in minor key, with long drawn wailings and half sobs, and was more pleading of life, the articulate travail of existence. Travail means weeping, usually crying when a loved one dies. It was an old song, old as the breed itself, one of the first songs of the younger world in a day when songs were sad. It was invested with the woe of unnumbered generations, this plaint by which Buck was so strangely stirred. When he moaned and sobbed, it was with the pain of living that was of old the pain of his wild fathers, and the fear and misery of the cold and dark that was to them fear and mystery. And that he should be stirred by it marked the completeness with which he harked back through the ages of fire and roof to the raw beginnings of life in the howling ages. So what's going on here? He's joining in the howling of these wolf-like dogs, these huskies, and he shouldn't, because he's not a husky, he's not a wolf, but it's showing that he's tapping into something of his deeper origins. He's tapping into his destiny in a way, or almost like his reverse destiny. It's like where he's come from, where his generations have come from. He's tapping into something very primal, like something very primitive, okay? That's what's going on here. Let's move on to the next paragraph in the middle of middle of page 35. 7 days from the time they pulled into Dawson, they dropped down the steep bank by the barracks to the Yukon Trail and pulled for Dyea and Saltwater. Perrault was carrying dispatches, if anything more urgent than those he had brought in. Also, the travel pride had gripped him, and he purposed to make the record trip of the year. Several things favored him in this. The week's rest had recuperated the dogs and put them in thorough trim. The trail they had broken into the country was packed hard by later journeyers. And further, the police had arranged in 2 or 3 places deposits of grub for dogs and man, and he was traveling light. So what happened was the trail that they went on, they made that trail through the ice and snow. No one made it before them. But it was such a great trail that now a lot of people have followed them on that trail. So it's packed down really tight and it's smooth, easy to get across. And there have been already so many people that have come across it in the last few days that now they've been able to drop off food in certain locations and lock it up in boxes so that you can stop along the way and eat. They've just left food there. Other people have left food there for everybody, so it's like a lot safer now. So now they're headed back to Dyea. Last paragraph on page 35. They made 60 miles, which is a 50-mile run, on the first day. And the second day saw them booming up the Yukon well on their way to Pelly. But such splendid running was achieved not without great trouble and vexation on the part of Francois. The insidious revolt, led by Buck, had destroyed the solidarity of the team. That means the togetherness. The solidarity means the together. Like solid, if something is solid, it's all the pieces are really close together. Solidarity means all your teammates really close together. But Buck had destroyed the solidarity. Okay, it's not solid anymore. The team's all over the place. It no longer was as one dog leaping in the traces. The encouragement Buck gave the rebels led them into all kinds of petty misdemeanors. No more was Spitz a leader greatly to be feared. The old awe departed, and they grew equal to challenging his authority. Pike robbed him of half a fish one night, and gulped it down under the protection of Buck. Another night, Dub and Joe fought Spitz and made him forego the punishment they deserved. And even Billy, the good-natured, was less good-natured, and whined not half so placatingly as in former days. Buck never came near Spitz without snarling and bristling menacingly. In fact, his conduct approached that of a bully, and he was given to swaggering up and down before Spitz's very nose. Okay, right here we see a contrast of leadership styles. Spitz leads by being a bully. Buck leads by getting other people on his side, right? He's a really wise leader. Now, we talked about at the beginning, we still have another paragraph to go, so don't leave the book yet. But we talked about at the beginning, before we started reading this book, that talking about dogs, his book's just not about dogs. If it were about dogs, you'd be like, yeah, it's a dog. But we're using dogs as metaphors for people. And so what we see here, yeah, we see two dogs, but really we see kind of like two people in a way. We're seeing the way leaders lead, okay? And so I want you to be thinking about that. Do you know people who are like Spitz? Do you know people who are just ready to steal and ready to take whatever they can? And do you know people like Buck, who are kind of strong, kind of quiet, but they get people on their side and they can lead a revolt? I think you do know some people like this. So let's finish up this last paragraph here on 36. It's the center paragraph. The breaking down of discipline likewise affected the dogs in their relations with one another. They quarreled and bickered more than ever among themselves, till, at times, the camp was a howling bedlam. Dave and Sol-leks alone were unaltered, though they were made irritable by the unending squabbling. Francois swore strange barbarous oaths, and stamped the snow in futile rage, and tore his hair. His lash was always singing among the dogs, but it was of small avail. Directly his back was turned, they were at it again. He backed up Spitz with his whip, while Buck backed up the remainder of the team. Francois knew he was behind all the trouble, and Buck knew he knew. But Buck was too clever ever again to be caught red-handed. He worked faithfully in the harness, for the toil had become a delight to him, yet it was a greater delight slyly to precipitate a fight amongst his mates and tangle the traces. Ooh, Buck. Buck's pretty cool. I'm just gonna say, he's slick, man. He's orchestrating the whole thing. Man, we see a change in this dog. This is not the dog we were introduced to at the beginning of the book. The one that saw snow for the first time and was like, ha, ha, what is it? What is it? This dog's, he knows what's up. All right, we're gonna stop it there. Okay, we are going to look at Blue Notebook, pages 33 and 34. You're going to fill it out. Work on them. Now, number 7, actually, it's like numbers 6, 7, and 8. Okay, number 6, 7, and 8. And you can see it here. on your slide, this direction right here. 6, 7, and 8. Number 7 is actually going to go on your vocabulary chart. Excuse me. But look at the quote there. All this stuff's going to go on your vocabulary chart. The direction is actually there. I think it's somewhere in here. It says put it in your vocabulary chart. But we have the word insidious. No, I don't mean the scary movie. I mean the word insidious. Okay? So work on those. Pause this video. Come back to me when you are done with that. Pause it now. Okay. So the last part of this lesson, now that you've finished all of that loveliness on page 33 and 34, zip way on over to page 37. You're going to see this cool little chart. Oh, you have it right here. All right, good. So you have that cool little chart, and you're going to add 2 incidents from chapter 3, anywhere in chapter 3. It has to be chapter 3, though. Okay, what chapter? Chapter 3. You got it. 2 incidents from chapter 3 that propel the action, build tension, reveal Buck's transformation from a soft Southland dog to Spitz's rival. Record each incident in the left column and your analysis observations on the right. Okay, so right here, summarize the event. Please, don't be lazy. Don't be like, fight, and you're going to write it like this too, because only people who write this bad would answer like that. Fight. They had a fight. They fought. The dog fought. Okay. All right, cool. Like, give it a full sentence. Okay, please put a complete sentence here. Summarize an event with a complete sentence. And get creative. Don't do the lazy ones. And then I want you to analyze, what does this event show about how Buck and Spitz are changing, or how their relationship is changing, or how the stakes are raised, or anything like that. And you're going to do the same thing here. Okay. And again, don't be lazy. Don't type rabies. Rabies. And you're going to spell it wrong because you're only using one word. Rabies. Yeah. Don't write rabies. Like, explain what happened. What happened? How'd the fight... Come on. Use your head. Work hard on it. Make it nice. Make it pretty. I'm serious. The more effort you give here, the easier this stuff is going to be when you put it into an essay. Yes, I said essay. Okay. Not yet, but just you got to prep, okay? Get your practice in. Complete sentences, capitals, punctuations, no laziness. You're awesome. Get it done. Pause the video. You're done, right? Good. Okay. As long as you're done. If you're not done, I'm going to know it. All right. But in this lesson, you continued reading and discussing Chapter 3 of Call of the Wild. You analyzed how incidents, 2 of them specifically, in the chapter, continue to propel the action, build tension between characters, and reveal aspects of Buck's and Spitz's character. You did good. Man, I coughed my way through this whole lesson, and I saved you from most of them, so be thankful. You guys are cool, man. Keep it up. Keep it up.